staring down at your feet.
So it's probably been a little over 3 years I've had this bike now, and I'm loving every second of it. So I kind of wanted to get out today and talk about it, the Trident 660. Now this bike was kind of popular when it first came out a few years ago. I think a lot of people viewed it as like kind of a cool entry-level bike that Triumph was finally putting out. You know, some people say it's entry-level into motorcycles, some people say it's an entry-level into fast bikes. I'm kind of walking the line there. I don't know, I have some opinions about it we can get into here in a bit, but overall, this bike's been great for me. I did do a review of it about a year ago. Probably not the best review. It was kind of like the third or fourth YouTube video I made on this channel. You know, I am very fond of this bike. I mean, I've had it for 3 years. You know, if I wasn't fond of it, I would have sold it by now, right? I mean, so I'm very happy with it. However, having it for some time, I've definitely developed some opinions on it, and I think it just goes for every bike. There are things that I don't like about it, and there are things I do like about it. So I would say definitely the things I like about it outweigh the things I don't like. So yeah, let's kind of get into that. Let's talk about it. Oh, it's so beautiful out here. Kawasaki getting after it today. Should definitely have some sleeves on, especially on this road, a little bit sandy. Looks, I love it. We've gone over this before. It's more of like a retro modern look, which I think looks great. I think that's like literally a direct quote from my last video on this bike. Yeah, the styling of this bike, very fantastic. They really did a good job of making a naked bike still kind of have that sporty look, but also have that classic Triumph look, and obviously have all the modern bells and whistles on it. I don't have cruise control. I could be wrong. I thought I seen something about maybe the new ones having cruise control, and if you kind of twist the throttle forward on this one, because this is a 22 I believe, you can kind of feel a little click. So I think, you know, they kind of set it up on a platform where maybe a cruise control module will come out and you can install it, and maybe that's already a thing. I don't know. I definitely should have done a little more research before doing this video, but it's okay. Mods I've done to this bike, just an exhaust really, and then, you know, cosmetically, got different mirrors. I just didn't really like the kind of the alien antenna look of the old ones, but you know, they worked great. And I'm not gonna lie, the bar end mirrors, there's definitely some things you sacrifice when you get bar end mirrors, like a little bit of elbow and stuff being in the way, and then if you move it too far out, you're not gonna be able to see nothing. But you know, there's definitely aftermarket stuff to be done to this bike. Some of the stuff is definitely a little bit pricey. I think Triumph does a pretty good job of providing a lot of like aftermarket stuff that works the best for these bikes, but also happens to be a little bit too expensive for a broke guy like me. So you know, definitely not terrible, but these are like Amazon bar and mirrors, Kemimoto. You know. Now, I don't think people should be starting out on a Trident 660 as their first, like very first motorcycle, but you know, that all depends on like who you are as a person, how mature you are, and just kind of like what you think you can handle. I mean, I wouldn't want an 18-year-old kid that just got his motorcycle endorsement on this learning how to ride on the street for the first time. But at the same time, if like some, you know, 35, 40-year-old guy that doesn't really want a bike to go stupid fast wants to get into motorcycling, this might be a good bike for him. I know in the first video I ever did on this bike, we talked about how rain mode might be a kind of a good learning curve. This bike does have a rain mode, and it does limit your power. So yeah, that's kind of my opinion. I don't think anybody should be like starting off as this as their first bike. Now I know there's gonna be comments saying, well, I started on 1000, I started on, you know, a Busa, I started on this. Everybody's different, man. That's just my take on it. I know when I was first starting off 8-ish years ago, Man, it has been 8 years ago. That's sad. You know, I definitely would not have been able to handle a bike like this. Not that I wouldn't have been able to ride it. I mean, it's not like crazy untapped power. It's just that I probably would not have been able to have been trusted. I was always chasing the adrenaline rush on bikes, you know. And luckily I had a 225 Enduro, so not much adrenaline to be chased on those. This bike is not stupid fast. This bike definitely puts down 660 in a way different way that you'd have like a 600 Ninja put it down. The gearing is a lot different, a little bit shorter. And I mean, you know, you still got a lot of pull to it and whatnot. It just kind of delivers it different than a sport bike would, I'd say. I think it's something you'll kind of see a lot with the naked bikes in this class, like the MT-07 and stuff like that. Just the power delivery is a lot different from a sport bike. So, you know, if you're getting this bike to do highway pulls with your buddies, not the bike. You know, I think it tops out at like 130-ish, maybe 140-ish. And it'll get there pretty, like, quick. I will say, for mountain riding, oh my gosh, it is fantastic. Especially since I moved out west, a lot more mountains to be ridden. But yeah, there's something about, you know, having a naked bike and just having that handling aspect where you're sitting upright and you can kind of really lean into what you're turning into, but also still having that power on tap, you know, to where you can really get on it in the straights and whatnot. So I think that bike does fantastic. I think the power delivery on it is awesome for what I was looking for. I will say it's not super fun to ride on the highways out here. The speed limits are 80 miles an hour, and there is no windscreen on this bike whatsoever, and you're just kind of sitting on top of it. So you're definitely going to get a lot of blowback there. You can definitely install a windscreen if you want your Trident to look like the ugliest bike on the road. In my opinion, I really don't like the windscreens. Now, I will say, some people, I have seen forums, people ask if, you know, this is a good bike to tour on. In my opinion, no. I'm 6 foot, maybe just below 5'11", or whatever. Same thing, but different, but same thing. You know, it's a little bit cramped. It's not a huge bike, especially for somebody that's going to be closer to that 6 foot range. For me personally, my KLR was way more comfortable when I had that. I'm kind of scrunched up on this bike. It's not uncomfortable for this ride. I mean, it's a 45-minute ride up, 45-minute ride down, so I would do just fine. I'll get off and stretch a little bit, but yeah, not to mention the seat on this bike is atrocious. It is not comfy whatsoever. There are covers you can get, and there are also aftermarket options, but just keep in mind the aftermarket seats are going to come with a little bit of hefty price tag if you're looking to get something more comfortable than the stock seat. At least that's what I've heard in the forums and whatnot. So just something to keep in mind, you know, if that's something that's going to bother you. A lot of older guys are looking for something a little more comfy. Might not be the bike. As for this sitting position, you do sit in a very like naked bike position. You're more upwards than you are leaned forward. It's just a slight lean forward, especially compared to enduro. So a lot of enduro guys that are looking into getting this, you're probably going to feel more sporty on this. A lot of sport bikes are looking to get in something like this. You're going to feel way more comfortable. I know I had a buddy with a Gixxer, and he sat on it and he's like, oh my gosh, this is the most comfortable thing in the world. And I had a buddy that had a Cruiser, and he sat on this thing, and he thought it was a little too sporty for him. He didn't like how lean forward he was, but he was also closer to that 6'5" range. So you're definitely not gonna be comfortable on this bike at 6'5". I mean, you could probably do like those shorter rides like the one I'm doing today, you know, but overall, I mean, yeah, you're gonna be scrunched up on this bike. You don't want this bike for highway pulls. You don't want this bike if you're a really tall guy looking to do some touring on it, right? What do you want this bike for? I mean, what's it really excel at? I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. I think it's a fantastic bike to just kind of cruise around town with. I mean, it's so fun. I could even see myself if my work was close enough, just hopping on this thing and going to work like almost every day out of the week. The weather's nice, you know. And by the way, it is kind of cold up here. It was hot down there. I was sweating my rear end off. Now we're kind of towards the top of the mountain, kind of where the ski resort is, and I am just freezing to death because I have all the sweat on my back. There's a valley down there. Probably see my house from up here. God. That was close to the edge. I came in there a little too hot. I also think this bike is just a great bike, just as like a weekend bike, fun bike, especially in the twisties and whatnot. You know, it's a very like kind of user-friendly, get into some curves and be sitting upright and really lean into them type of bike. And man, it's just so much fun, especially when you have, you know, that power on tap that you can really get into that 660 with. And earlier I know I said like, oh yeah, you know, this bike kind of sucks on the highway. I don't want that to be the opinion of this video. The bike doesn't suck on the highway. It does highway just fine. I do the 80-mile-an-hour highway out here perfectly fine when I need to get places, but you know, I just have to combat the wind and whatnot. And I just think if you're going to be wanting to do super high speed stuff on the highway, like doing some pulls on a sport bike with your buddies, you'd probably be better off getting a different 600 that's geared a little bit differently. And you know, kind of if you want to do some longer distance stuff, I personally just prefer a touring bike or a bigger dual sport. You know, that's just kind of who I am. You know, I know people have definitely done longer trips on these bikes, and it's very doable. So I don't want to downplay that either. I don't want you to think, you know, this bike is just a super cramped up wannabe sport bike that you can't really do any longer distance stuff on. People definitely do it all the time on these bikes, and people daily these bikes and stuff like that, especially India and Europe, places like that. A lot of people daily drive these Triumph Trident. You know, with a lot of these newer bikes, it seems like the more we hear about stuff like this. So I'm sure if you've done some research on this, you've heard two things. You've heard about the throttle, and you've heard about the maintenance light. The maintenance light comes on once a year, and you have to go get it reset at a dealer, even if you do your own service. And most dealers are charging around 70 bucks last I checked. That was about a year ago. I managed to reset mine by replacing the battery on this bike. So this bike thinks it's the year 2000. Yeah, it's kind of annoying. You know, you get this like maintenance light turn on the bike and you can't clear it. There are apps and whatnot that you can download and do it at your own risk. I personally, I don't know if I would. Or you could just adjust the date, because it does, the service light will come on every year or 10,000 miles. So when I hit 10,000 miles, I guess I'm just kind of gonna have to put up with it then. Service on this bike's pretty cut and dry. I mean, you just do general oil and chain maintenance and things like that. Don't look at my chain right now. I definitely do for some chain maintenance. I typically put a little bit higher quality oil in. It comes from the dealer with Castrol, like the racing oil, and that's kind of what I've been putting in just to keep it happy, especially since you know, most time I ride this bike I'm doing stuff like this, you know, getting on it a little bit more than I was with my KLR. Yeah, overall I love this bike. You know, I've had it for 3 years now, over 3 years, and it's one of those bikes, every time I get on it I tend to have a pretty good ride.